My name is Tracey Varnell, and I am really excited to be here today, so thanks for having me here. I'm an experienced design lead at Adaptive Path in lovely San Francisco. And for those of you who are new to the industry, Adaptive Path was the first UX agency that was founded in 2001. A lot of us probably know about them because back in the day you couldn't really go get a degree in user experience, and we were all learning from the stuff that they were sharing. And I'm here today to share some stuff with you guys, and hopefully it'll be useful. So, as you might have heard, we were purchased by a small, tiny bank in 2014 called Capital One. Not so small, actually. And that's actually going well, but that's not why I'm here today. So first of all, I want to start you off with a little bit of a common scenario. So let us begin. First, there's an idea. Somebody's got a great idea. It's probably your product manager, or maybe it's your CEO, or maybe it's your CEO's brother's cousin's uncle, or maybe his wife, and they have a great idea as well, or maybe it's your customer, and they have that one idea, and they just really want it. But regardless, somebody's got an idea. So some product leader goes off and makes a PowerPoint deck. And in that PowerPoint deck, there are bullets of information. And it tells us the business case, and it tells us what the product's supposed to do and how it's supposed to work. But, just a few bullet points to tell you that. At this point, somebody from upstairs sees the PowerPoint and they go, "Brilliant, ship it." And they assign an arbitrary deadline. And then, of course, the product manager, knowing that there's no way this group's going to hit that deadline, goes, "I know, MVP." So then, okay, so you're agile, right? So your dev shop's just sitting there. They're hungry. They're a hungry beast. They're waiting to be fed. So the product manager runs off, throws a whole bunch of features into the backlog. And, it's not really based on anything. There's no exploration. There's no validation. The dev team just starts. It's about this time that someone walks up to the design team and they're like, "Hey, we need you to build some screens. Here's some sketches." Or maybe if they're a more advanced shop, they do some design thinking. And they take that crappy idea and they actually ideate around that. And then they tell the team to make the screens. So then what you get is a pile of poop, because on the arbitrary release date, after the death march that we all go through, what should have been the MVP is actually a watered-down version of the MVP that's incomplete and it's poorly executed. So then we A/B test that piece of shit. And oddly enough, it performs poorly because it's a watered-down, incomplete piece of shit, basically. So then the team is now demoralized. They're sad. They start updating their LinkedIn account. They're like answering that email from that recruiter that's been calling them. And they're like, okay. And then at this point, then we start to polish it. Then we polish the turd. And we're trying to get some incremental lift, some small gain that can show that we built something that was worthwhile. Or the idea is completely trashed. And you know what? That idea probably could have been something. Okay, I want to stop here and just say this is a work of fiction. I know that my company never does this, and I know that your company never does this, but let me hear a round of applause if this sounds familiar to you. All right. So that's a lot of applauding. So what's going on here? How does this happen? We've been doing this for a while now. Why do our projects fail? I think we should stop and deconstruct it a little bit and start with just a breakdown. First of all, we're relying on guesses. The team really doesn't understand the problem. They don't really know the user needs. We're just throwing spaghetti against a wall, and it's all based on tummy feel, somebody's guess. The team has no certainty. They don't know if they're building the right thing. They couldn't go and ask for another 2 weeks or a month, even if they needed to, because they can't say for sure that what they're building is the right thing. They don't have any shared understanding of why the decisions were made, what the context was. They just start making MVP decisions and cutting stuff and throwing it out. This happens all the time, and usually those decisions are made very arbitrarily. Another thing that's going on here is that you're dealing with a top-down scenario. So somebody's just telling the team what to build. They don't have any active accountability. Even if they know that the ship is running into the iceberg, they can't do anything to change it. They're not really in charge or in control of making those decisions. So this is where the finger pointing, it's your fault, and the low morale start to happen. This is a bad work environment. Lastly, from that scenario, this is a lot of waste. That thing may be a piece of shit, but a lot of people worked really hard on that, and it takes a lot of time. There's design involved, there's development involved, there's QA testing, there's the A/B testing, there's the polishing that happened. All those things take time and money, and all that effort was wasted because nobody wanted it. So how can it be better? Well, I don't know about you guys, but I've spent the better part of my career thinking about this and trying to think about how to make it better, and we're all still working on this, I think. I think every single person in this room is probably trying to figure this out. And these days, I think a lot about how to design the process to make the product better. So how can you create a scenario by which you have better outcomes? Now, I think what we choose to build is definitely important. That's one of the key things, I think, is to have a good strategy, to know what you're going to build. I think we really should know that what we're building solves a problem for the user and that it matches our business goals. And that sounds pretty simple. Sounds like it's something worth investing in. But oddly enough, developing strategy seems very wildly ignored in every single company that I've consulted with, and that's a lot. So I think it gets ignored, and experimentation is thrown around a lot these days. Everybody's just kind of like, well, let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. And I think that that's kind of sad, because in order to build good products, we need good strategy. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about how we approach strategy, but I'm going to talk about the strategy and the methods that we use to get there, but I also want to talk about how we do it, because I think that's actually our secret sauce. So I'm going to throw this up here and just let it sink in. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Now, when you think about getting your whole team, your entire cross-functional team, or at least a subset of those people together, to make the decisions that you think you own, how does that make you feel? Together. Well, if this kumbaya moment fills you with a lot of existential dread, you are not the only one. I was also in your situation. I felt the same way. In the past, I've worked for a lot of traditional product environments. I've worked for startups. I've worked for agencies. And I've shipped a lot of products, a lot of fast and furious products. And to be honest, many times for me, getting there on time and on budget was more of an act of brute force than one of elegance. You just have to make it happen. And you have to do it fast, and you have to get it done. But the thought of collaborating with my cross-functional team, that sounded crazy. I mean, have you met those people? Like, there's that one guy. That one guy? Anyway, it really stressed me out. But since I joined Adaptive Path, I started to realize that it's more than just the steps of the process that we take, but it's more about collaboration, and collaboration can really make strategy stronger. But I hear you thinking out there, yeah, but if I collaborate, it's going to slow me down. It's going to slow us down. I know you're thinking that because I thought that too, but you're wrong. Well, actually, your first guess is wrong. Your first guess on what to build, no matter whether you talk to your customers often, no matter whether you think that you're a representative for your customer, no matter what the case is, there is always a better solution for building than your first guess. And I know this because I'm wrong a lot, and I've learned to just admit it and move forward. Because I want to remind you that building something, a piece of crap that nobody wants, is the biggest waste of time that you can possibly do. I hear this one a lot. I'm the mini CEO. I own it. I own it. Everybody owns it. Everybody wants to own it. Well, I want to stop and think. By the way, I heard this a lot in product management training. I own it. I'm the mini CEO. But I want you to stop and think, what kind of CEO do you want to work for? Do you want to work for a CEO who is a tyrant, who comes in and tells you exactly what to do and how to do it? Or do you want to work for a CEO who entrusts you and lets you learn and make the right decisions along the way? So I think we need to think about what kind of leaders we want to be. Because if your team doesn't own it, you will fail. Time and time again, you see products getting ready to ship, and if everybody doesn't understand the context of why the decisions were made, things will get tossed off the boat, and what you end up with is something that's not good for the customer and doesn't work for the business either. So again, if your team doesn't own it, you're going to fail. This one was my scariest. What if I can't manage them? I think I mentioned that guy earlier. You know, there's always that guy who's hard to manage, and he's kind of like bull in the china shop, and he comes in and like disrupts everything. You think you've got a lot of opinionated people in your business? Well, let me tell you, you're going to need them. You're going to need those opinions, and you're going to leverage them. To work together, we need a change in perspective. We need to rethink our view on our roles as product leaders. So if you are a UX lead, if you are a product manager, if you're a CEO, if you are a UX team of one, whatever you are, if you're making decisions about what's going to be built, then we have to change the way we think. We need to become facilitators of the process. So instead of controlling every detail of the end product, instead of specifying everything ad nauseum and then expecting everybody to come to you for every single question that needs to be answered, we need to start creating the knowledge of what the user needs are and what we're trying to build within the team in a collaborative way and give them the tools they need to make the right decisions along the way. Because command and control is dead, y'all, and that's for sure. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to be told exactly what to build. You know if you're on the receiving end of it, you don't like it. So we need to stop and think about the way that we approach what we do. First, I want to tell you a success story. Guardians of the Galaxy. I love this movie. It's a perfect example. For those of you who haven't seen this movie, these guys are assholes. Granted, they're all badasses, but they're assholes. They think they don't need each other. They're all kind of lone wolves doing their own thing. But in order to save the universe, they have to work together. And one of them can't dictate the plan. They have to come together, figure out the plan together. And it's really their individual strengths with a shared goal, plus their improvisation that lead them into success. So if you haven't seen the movie, see it. Also, Vin Diesel has some amazing dialogue, so you should check it out. So when you're thinking about who should you collaborate with, who should you include, these are just some examples of people that we include along the way. Customers. This one's really important, you guys. I know that everybody says this, and then every single group I talk to, I'm like, so you talk to the customers, and they're like, yeah, totally. And I'm like, when? They're like, well, maybe like a couple of years ago, we did some interviews. But yeah, not many people talk to their customers still. It's 2016. We can do this. You can talk to your customers. You can line this up. Trust me, it's not that hard. And once you start doing it, it gets easier. We also create cross-functional core teams. So everything that we set out to do, every project we set out to do, we grab a representative of dev and product and design and business and operations, or whoever needs to be involved, whoever's being affected by this, and honestly, whoever has the most information about what the customer needs are to begin with, we make sure we can get all those people in one room. Then after that, there's the extended team. So in the extended team, you may have, if you have on your core team the manager or a lead product manager or a lead operations person, on the extended team, you may have some people who work with him that actually talk to the customers directly. We like to include those people when we're brainstorming or we're doing more divergent work, because their opinions and what they know are really invaluable. So we like to bring them in. Then there's the indirect team, and that's people who are kind of affected out here. So maybe some salespeople eventually might have to sell this thing, or maybe there's some other group that just kind of needs to know about it later on down the road. We want to include them. We want to make sure they know what we're doing, that they can see how we got to where we got to when we decided what to build. And it's important to keep them in the loop as well. So these are all the people that we like to collaborate in our process. And then, thinking about when you should include other people in your process, honestly, I think it's all the time. But today, I'm going to talk about 4 different points of time which I think are good to include other people. 1, when you're hypothesizing. If you are trying to figure out what to build, you should probably include other people. Just saying. It's kind of important. At Adaptive Path, we tend to begin every engagement with a hypothesis. And the first step of that is generally getting everybody together to create a hypothesis. We get people together to understand their goals. You'd be surprised, you have like 10 people. Everybody in the room's got a different goal in their head. Nothing aligns, you don't know what's going on. And we all just kind of assume that they all want the same thing, but really they don't. They want vastly different things. And then even from a personal perspective, people are trying to accomplish certain things that you're not aware of. So the more you can get all that on the table early, the better chance you will have for success. I know it seems like maybe it's overkill to get a bunch of people together and talk about, what do you hope to achieve? What would mean success to you? What are some challenges or some risks that we might face? But if you can get those things in alignment earlier on, later on down the road, you won't be up against someone going, no, it's not. Why are you building this? What is it? You don't want to run into that scenario. Another thing we do is to try and find out as much information from the group as we can about what's known, what's in everybody's head around the value proposition, or even what they know about customers. A lot of times we get together, we'll have people draft experience maps together based off of what's known about the customer. And this is really fun to do because some people in the group may have less knowledge, some people have more. But even just doing this starts to create a conversation around, well, what do we know? What do we don't know? Are you sure about that? I'm not sure. So we can start to identify things that we're unsure of. We can start identifying things that we need to do more research on. But we focus in on a particular experience of the customer, generally a little more broad than just our product. And we say, what's the person doing? What's the person thinking? What are they feeling? What people are they interacting with? What touch points are they interacting with along the way? So that we can really start to understand what the user's going through, and we can start to think about where the low points are in that experience and where the high points are in that experience. And it gives us a place to start, gives us a place to ideate. Futurecasting is something that we do a lot too. So this is a fun thing to do with people. Have them create an ad of the future. It doesn't have to be like magnificent, but you want them to have a headline, have some points that they want to illustrate that tell tell the group, what are the most important things about this product in the future that we want to nail? And talk through these with your group. Have each person have different small groups do their own, and then come together and talk about what's the core nugget? What is it that you're actually trying to deliver on? What would mean value? What do we think means value? And I want to emphasize that because we're still hypothesizing. We don't actually know. Concept development is another thing that we do with our extended team. So this is a photo from a session that we had. It's about 18 people getting together to be sketch artists, honestly. We went through a really quick sketching activity that had them draw circles and squares and triangles. And by the end of that, we generated about 200 initial ideas just in about 30 minutes. So we like to time box each round of ideation, and we like to create a lens for ideation. For example, take a particular stage of the user's experience, like onboarding, for example, have them ideate around that. Take the next stage and have them ideate around that stage and the pain points within that stage. So you can take a group through this pretty quickly, and it generates a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas. And again, they're just hypotheses, they're just a start. These are the cards that we use. They're pretty simple. They have a concept title, stage, a place for them to draw it, a description. This is not science. This is not rocket science. You guys can make cards. You can do it with blank sheets of paper. It doesn't matter. This is what the end goal or the end output looks like. As you can tell, we have some very talented artists. I'm kidding, because it's really, it's just sketching. It's just sketching. But when they're describing it to the team, when they're describing their concept, you're getting ideas out of people. You don't just let them sit inside of the people you have on their team. You want to get it out. So this is a good way to do it. Sorry. We often move at that point to at least try and prioritize some of the ideas that we had. We start out by having people pick their top 5 themselves, so a little self-selection, and then we have each person present those 5, and then we will vote on which ones we think have the best traction or the ones with the most momentum that we think are actually going to be good. You might use a green dot for the ones that are most interesting or compelling. You might use a red dot for the ones that are most valuable to the business. You can decide how you want to structure this, but the idea is let the good ideas percolate up to the top. This is another example of a team, a very happy team, prioritizing their concepts. After that point, you can I tend to take all the concepts, honestly, not just the ones that we prioritized, but our group tends to take all the concepts and starts to think about, all right, what are the patterns here? What are the themes? What things can we start to group together? And you might find like, okay, all these are kind of like this, and all these are kind of like this, and all these are kind of like this. So you can start to create different concepts, and really, again, you're just hypothesizing. You're just putting something down. But you've let everybody be part of this process. You've let everybody come to the table with their ideas, and from that, you've included a bit of everybody's little DNA, everybody's ideas have been involved in this. And then that brings us to the second stage, which is validation. So in validation, this is when we like to get the customer involved. Now, let me stop here and just say, if we had no one in the room who knew much about the customer to begin with, we would have done generative research in the beginning. But because we have people in the room that supposedly know about the customer, we skip to validation in this example. So in this example, we're bringing customers into the mix. We like to generate tools that extract out of them information about their experience so that they'll tell us what they've experienced, and we can validate what we previously thought was true in that hypothesis workshop where they were making the experience map. We like to put different ideas in front of people. This is one of when I showed you the 1, 2, or 3 concepts, this is another one of those. But it's not really about getting them to choose A, B, or C. It's about getting them to talk through each one and talk about what's working, what's not working, and how it could be better. And sometimes we even just throw it away and go, tell me about what you think. If you had to build it from scratch, what would you do? But it's a way to get the conversation started. And the point of it is to learn more. It's to learn more. It's not about A, B, or C. A lot of times it's an amalgam of those, and that's okay. Because it helps us get closer to a point where we're creating something that has value to the customers. We like to bring other people in to the customer feedback. So if we can, we try and include other people in by watching video. Sometimes we just create a snapshot if other people weren't able to be there that tells what happened in the research and keeps everybody on the same page. I've kind of blocked this out because we don't want to get in trouble. Synthesis is something that recently we've been doing as a large team. Kind of amazing. I never thought I'd be doing synthesis with a whole bunch of people. Here's an example of the first round of synthesis that they did with the full team. This is last week, by the way. They're taking all the artifacts from the research and starting to line them up and then starting to pull out the nuggets of each item. And then in another day, they bring it all together and then start to synthesize that even more to more themes and then actually start to create experience maps based on archetypes that they found in their research. So it's really interesting to see groups starting to even collaborate in synthesis. To me, that was always like I'm just going to go over here and do this by myself kind of thing. You can, after you start to get your information, you start to learn more about your customer, you can create experience principles together. You're starting to bake down, you're starting to understand more about the user, you're starting to have more knowledge, more truths, so you can do things like create experience principles, which tell you how you want the product to feel. You can use them to generate ideas. You can also use them to double check and make sure that what you're building along the way actually meets these experience principles. You might create personas. Sometimes it's good to keep those in mind, I think. You might create a more formalized experience map. So take the original assumptions, set them aside, take what you learned. Sometimes it's fun to compare and contrast. What did the team think they know? What's actually true? That's fun. The third point that I think it's good for collaboration is an envisioning. Now, to create a vision, what we're trying to do here is really to help the team understand what we're going to build. So we've gone through hypothesizing, we've gone through validation. We're starting to boil it down a little bit more, and so we can kind of go back to the drawing board on what we want our solution to be. And one way that we do that is we get the team back together and we start to generate storyboards and essentially work those concepts into a more formalized vision. This is the tool that we use for that. It's really complicated, a lot of boxes. This says features, so there's a box to draw in, there's features, and then there's a narrative, so you can write a story and tell a story. We also let people present those ideas to the team. We go through some more prioritization just to let the really solid ideas that the whole group is really kind of gravitating to bubble up to the surface. This is an example of how messy the process is. This is a group of auditors. They had a lot of changes. So when we think about a tangible vision, we're really thinking about something that helps everybody see the experience of the future, our North Star, where we're headed. Now, each of these storyboard boxes is really a moment, a key moment, and it's really a piece of the DNA about that tells the discrete touch points of your journey over time. So this one's really illustrated. This is pretty wild, so don't let it scare you. Because this is another one we did that we just took photos and then traced the photos and colored them in Photoshop. Here's another example that was created by a previous member of Adaptive Path when she created food spotting. So this is it's a vision poster. So it tells about the service that she's building and really highlights all the touch points for the customer. It's all sketches. So really, you don't have to be a wild artist to make this happen, because as long as it tells a story, as long as it tells everyone that you're working with, what is it that we're building? What problems is it solving for the customer? Then you're hitting your mark. It's actually a vision that people can follow. The next point that I want to talk about that's great for collaboration is planning. Now, when we think about planning, well, let me back up. If you're trying to figure out what to build first, and what to build second, and what to build third, and how to work all that out, you should really involve other people. You shouldn't just go do that by yourself. And when we think about planning, we think about cupcakes. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard about this model or not, but Brandon Schauer, who is our president, came up with this idea for a cupcake model several years ago. But here's the idea. So your North Star is your wedding cake. It's big. It takes a lot of work. It's hard to get to the end and have this beautiful wedding cake, right? Most businesses, especially ones that do MVPs, as it were, they will start by creating just a layer cake, and they're like, oh yeah, we're totally going to put some yummy filling in it later, and then after that we're going to put the icing on it. And we all know that filling never really gets in there right. It's kind of like half broke. Everything's kind of smushing out of the sides, and we don't ever really get to the icing. So instead of going about work in this way, instead, make a cupcake. A cupcake is a smaller version of a wedding cake. It has all the same components, but a cupcake is complete, a cupcake is tasty, and people want it. So think about how you're staging your products and what you want to build first, second, third in terms of cupcakes, cakes, and wedding cakes. In order to do that, we like to get people together, and we like to say, okay, if we took our North Star, it's going to have all these things, all these features. Which parts of that could make sense in a cupcake? Which parts of that could make sense in a cake? Which parts should we leave for later on that we may or may not get to because we might pivot first? So we go through a lot of trouble just to get all the stuff out, to have those conversations. But in the end, everybody who's in that room and everybody who's making those decisions has intimate knowledge of why we chose to put those things in the cupcake and why we chose to put those things in the cake. So when features start getting cut and things start getting thrown away, you'll hear a louder protest because they're like, no, but if we take that away, then it's not solving this need. And if we don't solve that need, then we don't have a cupcake. So you're starting to build in that context and helping people understand why the decisions were made, not just throwing things in the backlog. Another thing we started doing is helping groups with their roadmap. So if you've got your features, you can start to make themes from those and create a roadmap so you can see out over time and say, this is our cupcake, and the first cupcake, that's the enable phase. And that's going to include, we can describe it. It has a reasoning behind it. There's a reason why it's a particular phase. There's a value to the customer. If that was the only thing we launched, it would still be valuable. But then you can also see how it plays out into the cake phase and into the wedding cake phase. And I personally think this really helps keep teams on track. We have a tendency to have scope creep or changing directions rapidly. We're all working on one thing this day, and then all of a sudden everybody focused on this other thing. This at least lets us know that we had a complete thought around what we wanted to build and why. We had a justification for why we wanted to do it this way. And yes, we can change, but there better be a good reason for doing it, honestly, especially if everybody who was in the room came up with that decision together. We started to dabble in program planning. We're able to take those roadmap items and start to break them into actual initiatives that can help teams figure out what they want to build over time. This is a crazy program planning workshop that happened recently where they were mapping all the internal initiatives that were going on within one line of business against a vision for the future. So if you look on the top line, there's a vision. Then everybody came into the workshop and put up their initiatives that they were working on so that they could start to coordinate a little bit better, because everybody was essentially just throwing spaghetti against the wall. So this is one way that we've started to collaborate to reel in multiple initiatives. Here's the example of what that looked like afterwards. You can see there's like so many initiatives going on, and it's interesting for a group of people to stop and go, okay, wait a minute. There's 14 groups working on this one area, and no one's working on that other area, but it's really still important too. And also, are we coordinating all these things together? Or are we all just building something different and expecting at the end of the day that by magic, we're going to come out with a great end-to-end user experience? So I've got 5 pro tips that I want to leave you with today. You can still steer. So don't think that you're just powerless. You can develop dispute techniques. For example, my team used to say, take it to the streets anytime anybody was fighting, because it meant that we didn't have enough information. So if we were going to take it to the streets, we had to write it down, and then we had to go and find out the truth, either from talking to customers or from talking to a subject matter expert. Number 2, don't stop collaborating. This is not the place to stop. The backlog should be a shared responsibility. Everybody should be talking about what's going to be included in the next sprint. Also, measuring and refining the product should be a team activity. You should be deciding as a team, what's going on here? How do we want to make it better? What are the decisions we want to make? How do we prove that? How do we try and work on it? Try and do that together. Also, I know a lot of people in the room are like, whoa, that's a lot of strategy. We don't have time to do that. But to be honest, you can also do it in layers. So take a week out of your busy Agile schedules and do some research, and then put it aside. I mean, you need to put it aside in a way that you can come back to it, but you can put it aside. Come back a few weeks later, do the synthesis, figure out what you can learn from it. You can do experience mapping anytime, really. You can start to figure out what the opportunities are anytime. You don't have to do all these things up front and in some, unicorn way where you have 6 months to do something. You can layer this into what you're already doing while you're kind of trapped in the vortex of Agile. Number 4, have high expectations. I think, and my 5th grade teacher best friend would tell you that if you have high expectations from people, they will rise to that occasion. So have high expectations for your coworkers. They will collaborate with you, and they will be smart, and they will be easy to work with, I promise. Lastly, document it along the way. Take photos, they come in handy. People get excited about being part of a collaborative process. They want to be part of it. And then when you start to show that story to other people, they want to do that too. They want to be part of that process. So make sure to document along the way. Have someone on your team that's a documentarian that just takes photos. And then when you're telling the story about how you arrived, when you're telling the story about how your product became great, you'll have some great examples to show. So in summary, hypothesize together, validate together, envision together, and plan together. And now I came here today to give you proof that collaborating can actually happen, that you can do it. And I know that you're thinking, well, would you go back to the way you did it before? And the answer is, no way. Thank you, guys.